There's this one study that gets passed around a lot. It usually shows up with a photo of Einstein's desk in Princeton in 1955 that was taken a few hours after his death. And his desk is covered in papers. The bookshelf behind him is jumbled with books. The claim attached to that photo is pretty simple. A messy desk means that you're more likely to be a creative genius. And a clean desk means that you're playing it safe. And look, if you've ever felt a little bit defensive about that giant mail pile on your kitchen counter, or the fact that your craft table hasn't seen bare wood since, last spring, this is a study that you've been waiting for because somebody somewhere is finally telling you that the mess is working in your favor. And I mean, I'll be honest, my own work table here would make a case for this study all on its own on some days. So I'm not pretending that my house is a catalog spread, fully clear, clean, minimalist. Oh, not at all. I am curious, though, about this claim that I've heard more than a few people using to settle an argument with their partner or with themselves about whether cleaning up their work area actually matters. Does that sound familiar? I get why this spreads the way that it does because it reads like a permission slip, right? Keep the books and the papers exactly where they are. Science has your back. As someone who spends my days talking about clear surfaces and working systems, headlines like that really make me curious. Is there something there that I'm missing? Is there research proving that we, professional organizers, we respond to calls from people who want to organize their home offices or other surfaces and rooms, but are we doing them a disservice by helping them clear it up? So here's what I did. I went and I read the actual study, the actual data, and then I kept going because I wanted to know what happened to it after it got all famous. Did anyone else try to run the same experiment again? Did it hold up over time? And what I found is more interesting than mess equals genius. And it's really useful for how you think about your own home, especially if you've got a spot in your house that's supposed to be a little bit used all of the time, like a project table or a hobby corner, somewhere that was never meant to look completely pristine, like in a magazine spread. So this episode is for the work to live well folks in the audience, the ones who are trying to figure out where the rules can bend and where they really can't. You already know some rules in your house get to flex depending on the day, and some really don't. And today we're going to figure out which category a messy desk actually falls into. So let's get into it. Welcome to Organizing for Beautiful Living. I'm Z Siman, the choosy organizer. This podcast is for the women who are done organizing everything and they're ready to be choosy about what matters, what's enough, and what can wait. This is episode 119, and today we're talking about the messy desk study, the one with Einstein's picture attached to it, the one that everybody uses to defend their piles everywhere. So this episode is going to lean a little more into the research than usual. That's on purpose though, because getting this one right might actually change how you think about your whole house, not just your desk. So fair warning, there are a couple of study names and journal titles coming up in a few minutes that are mouthfuls. I promise I'll keep it conversational as much as possible, but I wanted you to know why this episode sounds more like a research briefing than usual. But by the end of the episode, you're going to know what that famous study actually found, what happened when other researchers tried to repeat it, and more importantly, you're going to have a real answer for the only question that matters here. Not, is mess good or does it keep me creative? But where in your home does a little chaos actually belong? And where is it just costing you time and calm? Because that's really what this episode is about. It's not just permission to let everything go, never tidy your desk again for the sake of being a creative genius, but a clearer way to decide what should get a little room to breathe and what doesn't need it. Okay, so let's start with the actual study, the one everybody points to. It came out in 2013 in a journal called Psychological Science, and the lead researcher's name is Kathleen Voss. She was at the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management working with two colleagues, Joseph Redden and Ryan Rahinel. And here's what they actually did. They put people in one of two rooms. One room was tidy with everything in its place. The other room was a mess with papers scattered and stuff out of order. Then they gave everyone a task. In one part of the study, people had to come up with new uses for a ping pong ball, which is a pretty standard way researchers measure creative thinking. The people in the messy room didn't just come up with more ideas, but outside judges also rated their ideas as more original. In a different part of the same study, people in the tidy room were more likely to choose a healthy snack over a treat, and they donated more money when they were asked. And in a third part of the study, people in the tidy room picked the option labeled classic, while people in the messy room picked the one labeled new. So the actual finding was more nuanced than just mess makes you a creative genius. It was really about how order and disorder each nudge you toward different kinds of choices. Order nudges you toward convention. Disorder nudges you toward breaking from it. None of this was about IQ or lifelong genius, by the way. It was about which kind of room nudged people toward one type of decision over another in the moment that they were sitting in that room. So now here's where the story gets stretched a bit. Once the study made the headlines, it got boiled down to one sentence. A messy desk means you're altogether more creative or creative genius. Somebody found a photo of Einstein's chaotic desk, put the two together, and that combination has been circulating ever since. But the original study never said, keep your whole house messy. It tested one narrow task in one specific setting for a short window of time. It never tested whether living in ongoing clutter makes you more creative over months or years, or what that kind of clutter does to your stress, your sleep, or your ability to find your car keys. It tested just one afternoon, one task in one room. A single afternoon in a lab is a long way from your actual kitchen counter on a random Tuesday in October, right? So that gap between what the study actually shows and what the headline claims it shows, that's usually where the good story is hiding. So what happened next? Well, in 2019, a group of researchers, Alberto Manzi, Yana Dermisheva, Shannon Pinniger, Andrew Rogers, and Justine Ramos, published a study in a journal called Frontiers in Psychology. They wanted to try the same basic setup again, but with a bigger group of participants and more precise ways of measuring creativity. So they used two separate creativity tests instead of just one, plus a whole set of measures for things like mental flexibility and focus. Then they ran the same comparison, messy desk versus tidy desk. And this time, nothing showed up. No meaningful difference in creativity between the two groups or any of the measures they used. This was a bigger group of participants using sharper measuring tools, the same exact basic question, and still nothing showed up. So you've got the original study saying disorder sparks originality, and a more careful attempt at replicating the same question, finding basically nothing, no differences. That's not exactly the tidy kind of science quote that would end up on a coffee mug, right? If a finding can't survive a more careful look, then it's worth questioning for sure. I'm telling you about a study that contradicts itself because that's honestly how a lot of research works. Studies get published, they get famous, and then other researchers try to check the work. Sometimes it holds up, sometimes it doesn't. That's just science doing its job. And when the follow-up work doesn't confirm the exciting version, well, the more careful result is usually the one That's worth trusting, even when it's less fun to repeat at a dinner party, right? Oh, yeah, those are all my books over there on the floor and on the couch because I need that chaos to be creative. So, where does that leave us? Here's what I think actually matters here. This was never really about whether mess is good for you. It's about whether your environment is doing the job you need it to do in that specific moment for that specific task. Think about a project table where you're in the middle of a jigsaw puzzle, or a sewing table with fabric scraps spread out so you can see all of your options at once, or a garage workbench mid project with parts laid out in some order that makes sense only to you. That kind of mess has a job. It's holding information that you're actively using, and it's letting you see all your options at once instead of digging through bins. It's temporary too, which matters just as much as whether it's useful, okay? That is a completely different animal from the mail pile in your kitchen counter or the stack of paperwork that's been sitting on the dining room table for 3 weeks, doing nothing except making your evenings harder. You already know which pile in your house is which. That kind of clutter, that isn't helping you to think. It's just costing you a few extra minutes and some of your calm every time you walk past it. The same word, mess, describing two completely different situations. One active and temporary, the other stuck and permanent. That study that everyone loves to quote was only ever really about testing the first kind. This is actually a limit problem. You don't need less mess everywhere in your house. You need messy areas with a boundary around them and a plan for when it gets edited back down to tidy again. That's hard to do when you're someone who needs order to be able to think clearly. That's me to a T. When my kids were young, they loved Legos, and that's probably familiar to you too. And often on the desk in my son's room, I would find these half built Lego sets, some books, maybe an empty bowl from a snack that he had. And it was so tempting to clear that up while he was taking a shower, because in my mind, that would mean that he could come there and do his homework clearly without distractions, because all of those things would be distracting to me if I tried to work there. But then what would that mean if I cleaned it up? If he was in the middle of an active building session, cleaning it up and putting it away would signal that I was in control of that space, not him, that this wasn't important. But if it was a set of abandoned builds, like he started something, but he isn't interested in finishing building it, then leaving it there just allows the chaos to continue. So it's important to make that distinction, whether that's for your own creative space or your kids. If I'm in the middle of a sewing project, but I know that tomorrow I'm going to need this table to work on client work, what are my options? It's still an active build, an active project, right? Well, having a staging area is key, a temporary way to clear a space but not negate all the creative thought that was put into the project so far. And after I complete my client work, well, then I can pull out the bin that I put all my pieces into, lay them out again, and keep going. Same with Legos. You can have a staging shelf or smaller shoe sized bins to hold the works in progress without destroying them, put them aside while the homework is getting done, and then lay them out again afterwards. Ideally, you want the mess to have a container instead of spreading. If you share your home with other people, say out loud what that container is for so nobody puts away a puzzle or feels like they have to work around a mess with no boundary. Then set a simple checkpoint, maybe once a week or once a project, to see if that project is complete or if it's been abandoned. And then, if that's the case, you put it away before the mess creeps into the rest of your house. So, yeah, a space can get to stay a little wild. Everywhere else can still stay calm in your home. You get to keep both the space that sparks your best ideas and the home that doesn't make you want to pull your hair out every time you walk through it. So, in the end, the true answer to is a messy desk the sign of creative genius is, well, it depends. And probably not in the sweeping way that the memes suggest, right? What actually matters isn't whether you're a tidy person or a messy person. It's whether the mess in front of you is doing something for you right now or whether it's sitting there stalled. A chaotic project table that is mid-project is doing something. A pile of books on your couch from 3 weeks ago is probably not. So the real move here isn't more organizing everywhere. It's being choosy about where a little chaos can be okay, giving it a boundary and checking on it regularly so it doesn't take over the rest of your house and it doesn't become permanent. So the next time that somebody sends you that Einstein photo as proof that cleaning up is a waste of time, you'll actually know the whole story, the original finding, the kind of overstretched version that went viral, and then the more careful study that in the end couldn't back it up. So now you can figure out exactly which spots in your own home deserve a little permission to stay messy and which ones should just be cleaned up already. If you're now thinking about where in your own home a little mess might actually be earning its keep and where it's just wearing you down, that's exactly the kind of thing I love talking through with people one-on-one. I offer a free consultation, a no-cost 30-minute conversation where we look at what's really going on in your space and we figure out what's worth tackling first. We'll talk through what's actually working in your home right now and what isn't, so you have real clarity and not just a to-do list. There's no pressure, no obligation. You can book it right from the link in the show notes or head to fireflybridge.com/consultation to grab a time that works for you. Your house doesn't need to be perfect, and it certainly doesn't need to look like a magazine spread. Mine certainly doesn't. Your house just needs a few spots that are allowed to be a little alive, a little chaotic sometimes, and a few boundaries so that the chaos doesn't spread everywhere else. That's the whole choosy trade-off. Not more rules, just better boundaries. Have a beautifully organized week, you guys. I'm Z, and I'll see you on the next episode.